Visions of Bodies Being Burned is the fourth studio album from experimental hip-hop trio Clipping, arriving almost exactly a year after the last release, There Existed an Addiction to Blood. Clipping over the last 5 to 6 years now have made their sound being very intense, combining elements of noise, industrial and experimental hip-hop, and that has put them on the map as one of the most forward-thinking bands in alternative hip-hop. 2014's self-titled album put them on the map with a distinct, vivid and violent way of telling stories. Daveed Diggs' training as an actor has probably helped him craft these very vivid and visual rap lyrics. His stories are always very detailed, and they've always got a kind of dark, twisted sense of humor about them. Songs on the first album like Story 2 and Work Work are some of the most creative pieces of storytelling I've heard in hip-hop over the last decade. The next album was 2016's Splendor and Misery, and that saw the trio go even further into the realm of high concept storytelling with an album rooted in both more musically classical and futuristic industrial music, and merging that with this tale centered in Afrofuturism about essentially an escaped slave on a cargo ship in space. Last year's album, There Existed an Addiction to Blood, was essentially like watching a series of short horror films or horror clips, and this album isn't too dissimilar in that respect. I think the main difference between this new album and the last album is that they've lent into it even further. It's more abrasive, it's more violent, it's more detailed, and it's more conceptual, and I think it works all the better for it. A song like Something Underneath is a perfect example of this. It's essentially a song about a zombie uprising and the coming apocalypse. The spin on the classic zombie story in this case is that the zombies are essentially the good guys, and they've come to rid planet Earth of the disease that is humans. This is an idea that was executed similarly on 2019's The Deep EP, except this time it's more intense and with a bit more lyrical acrobatics thrown in. I think the way this album opens is a good indicator of what you're going to hear, which is usually the case on Clipping albums. The intro is mainly these massive sounding drums that get louder and louder and louder as the song goes on. It sounds like a giant monster that is on its way to crush humanity. Say the Name sounds to me like Clipping's dark take on traditional Southern hip-hop. Of course, the chopped and screwed vocals on the hook lends itself to that sound, but also the electronic, bouncy beat of the hook as well. Daveed Diggs gives one of his more laid-back and subdued performances on the album, but it's just as captivating and engaging as anything else on here. 96 Neve Campbell is a genius concept for a song in my head. It's essentially from the perspective of the stereotypical vulnerable final girl in horror movies, but the twist on this take is that this character is self-aware about her position. One of the most unsettling songs on here is Make Them Dead, and that's just musically and sonically before you get to the lyrics. It's easily the most overt and clear embrace of pure brash noise music on the entire album. The very removed, nonchalant, relaxed delivery on this song, coupled with the strange ambient sounds and creepy vocal samples, make this one of the more unsettling tunes on here. The song She Bad sounds like a take on traditional witch hunts that happened kind of in the Middle Ages, and it's done to excruciating detail as well. I think this song works as two things at the same time. It works as a straight up horror story about a witch hunt, but also kind of serves as an allegory about the treatment of women right here, right now. Pain Every Day to me is the most creative and mind-blowing song on the entire album. Daveed Diggs takes on the role of a ghost who kind of dismantles the accepted traditional notions of the afterlife. A lot of these songs have a twisted sense of humor to them. And the dark twist on this song is that the afterlife is just the beginning of the pain. One of the bars he says is, death wasn't really the worst part, time floating above is. This character is enraged by the bullshit, meaningless ceremony that the living choose to indulge in. After about a minute of the song, the instrumental opens up and you hear like a cacophony of every percussion sound you can possibly think of. And it does, to me, it sounds like the chaos I would go through just learning that I'm just starting my eternal pain. Again, the final minute is completely instrumental, and from a musical standpoint, it's one of the most interesting things on the entire album. The song Check the Lock sounds like an attempt to change and recontextualize the meaning of the word horror. It's essentially Clipping's take on the Ghetto Boys song Mind Playing Tricks on Me, which is where this album gets its name from. It's one of the more traditionally structured hip-hop songs on the album. It's detailing this, what sounds like this crime boss's intense paranoia about essentially his life catching up to him. Well, I'm not a drug kingpin, so I don't know, but the life of a criminal like this probably is intensely stressful, and you probably do get extremely paranoid, and it wouldn't be too dissimilar to living in a horror film every day. Body for the Pile addresses the real life horror movie that's happening over in America right now, which is police brutality. And the twist in this song is that this character eventually gets his violent comeuppance. I think fittingly, this song has some of the most nuanced lyrics on the entire album, particularly the bar, red and blue lights spinning on the corner by the new fried chicken spot, which I think says so much so concisely. Enlacing is the closest thing we could ever imagine to hearing a Clipping club song. It kind of feels like a party for the underworld. It sounds like the seedy underbelly of an illegal rave. It sounds like with this song they've taken quite a lot of influence from the whole cloud rap wave that was going on about 10 years ago with artists like Lil B, Clams Casino, and even A$AP Rocky. The album closes with an expected avant-garde art musical piece, this time a composition by Yoko Ono. Thankfully, I didn't have to sit through 18 minutes of a piano on fire like the last album. Visions of Bodies Being Burned is, I think, both more subtle and more boundary pushing than its predecessor. It's darker, it's more hostile and abrasive, and I think it's more tangible with a greater dedication to concepts. Clipping have evolved over the last few years to being something much grander and more cinematic than I ever could have imagined. And I'm just eager and excited to see what they do next. Those are my thoughts on the album. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Make sure to like, subscribe, and dong the bell. And I will see you next time.